I came to the Riviera wanting to understand what shaped this place beyond the beaches. But beneath the modern luxury lies a fractured borderland shaped by Roman conquest, tuberculosis, and an identity crisis that redrew the map of this coastline. This isn't just a postcard, it's a living archive. Welcome to the French Riviera. It's a stretch of coastline that runs along southeastern France and borders the Italian Riviera. It's sunny here upwards of 330 days a year, which is why it's so appealing to beachcombers. If you're planning a French Riviera itinerary, understanding how this shoreline evolved makes the whole trip richer. It's often said that up to 90% of the world's superyachts pass through these waters at least once. But its transformation into a global destination didn't start with wealth, it started with a disease. By the 1700s, British travel journals were already romanticizing this coastline, a place where winter sunlight felt restorative and the sea air promised relief. A Scottish physician even prescribed the Riviera's climate to treat consumption, what we now call tuberculosis. That idea changed everything. British aristocrats began spending entire seasons here, and when the railroad arrived in the mid-19th century, the Riviera opened to the world. Writers and artists followed. F. Scott Fitzgerald found inspiration here. Edith Wharton drafted her Pulitzer Prize-winning novel along these shores. And painters like Matisse and Picasso came for the light that defined their work. And our journey begins in the town that became their sanctuary, Antibes. We are in Antibes, France. It's about 30 minutes west of Nice, and it is a perfect base for our 4-day trip to the French Riviera. It's as historic as it is charming. The historic center is surrounded by walls that were originally built by the Romans, about 200 BC. The Cathedral Basilica has watched Antibes evolve for nearly 1,000 years. Its earliest foundations trace back to the first Christian communities on this coastline, rebuilt again and again through invasions and earthquakes. Today, it sits beside the Picasso Museum, a reminder that Antibes has always been a crossroads of faith, art, and resilience. Antibes has long been a refuge for artistic reinvention. The Picasso Museum sits inside a former Grimaldi palace, the dynasty that has ruled nearby Monaco for centuries, on a site that once held the Greek acropolis in the 3rd century BC. Picasso worked here for about 6 months, and today more than 200 of his pieces remain in this space, a reminder of how deeply this coastline shaped his creativity. The Marché Provençal has been the heart of Antibes since the 12th century. It's one of the oldest continuously operating markets on the Riviera, and even CNN named it one of the top 10 fresh markets in the world. It's the kind of place travelers end up calling one of the best things to do in Antibes, not because it's flashy, but because it feels lived in. Long before artists and writers arrived, this is where fishermen, farmers, and cheesemakers gathered every morning, and it's still the most authentic window into daily life here. Another fun thing to do while you're in Antibes is walk along the ancient wall that surrounds the city. On one side, you have the superyachts, and the other side, we have the Mediterranean. These fortifications once protected Antibes from attacks along the coast. Parts of the wall date back centuries, and walking them is one of the best ways to see how the old town meets the Mediterranean. I love getting up before everybody else. You get great pictures this way. Problem is you don't get very far. I keep seeing, my husband calls me a squirrel because I keep looking and making detours everywhere I walk to take a picture. There are worse things, I think, right? Eventually, I did make it out of the old town and straight toward one of Antibes' most striking landmarks. Fort Carré was built in the 16th century to defend Antibes from attacks along the coast. Its star-shaped design gave soldiers a clear view in every direction, and the fort remained a strategic lookout point for centuries. Today, it's one of the best places to see how Antibes once guarded the edge of France. From Antibes, I take a quick ride along the coast. This brings us to Nice, the largest city on the French Riviera and often considered its unofficial capital. Its nickname is Nice the Beautiful, and it fits. But before we get into the modern city, we're heading slightly north to a neighborhood called Cimiez, the best place to understand how Nice became Nice. Just outside the center, the Archaeological Museum sits on the remains of an ancient Roman settlement. The amphitheater once held about 5,000 people, smaller than most in the empire, but still home to the same spectacles. Walking through the site, you can trace the outlines of the thermal baths and imagine how upper-class Romans lived, worked, and socialized. It's easy to see why people call this one of the most meaningful places to visit in Nice, the kind of spot that makes the city's past feel startlingly close. From here, it's only a short ride back into the heart of modern Nice. If walking around Nice reminds you of Italy, well, there's a good reason for that. Specifically, it belonged to Sardinia, the island of Sardinia, which is off the coast of Italy, till 1860. And what happened in 1860? Well, it was the Second Italian War for Independence. Sardinia wanted to kick Austria out of northern Italy, and they needed the help of the French. So the Sardinia and French alliance won, and to thank France for the help, Sardinia gave Nice to France. That political handoff created a fascinating cultural mix. The beaches here are made of pebbles, not sand, which makes the water incredibly clear, a deeper blue than most places along the Riviera's 71-mile coastline. But Nice's roots go even further back. The Greeks arrived around 300 BC and named the city after the goddess of victory, Nike. Their influence is still visible today, including the monumental statue of Apollo in one of the main plazas. Nice is a French city with an Italian heart and a Greek name. We are in Grasse, in France, about 15 kilometers away from the water. Why are we here? Well, because this is the perfume capital of the world. It's been that way since the 18th century. Grasse wasn't always about luxury fragrance. Its rise began with something far more practical and honestly far less pleasant. In the 17th and 18th centuries, this town was known for tanning leather for the royal court. The work was meticulous, but the smell was awful. Wherever tanning was done, the process was messy and labor-intensive. To mask it, some regions used mint. But Grasse had an advantage. These hills are naturally filled with fragrant flowers and aromatic herbs. Locals began scenting the leather, and over time, the scent became the craft. What started as a workaround for a stinky industry eventually shaped Grasse into the center of French fragrance culture. And because perfume is still very much a living craft here, I wanted to experience it in the most immersive way I could, by making one myself. Galimard felt like the right choice. It's one of the oldest perfume houses in Grasse, founded in 1747, and it's been part of this story from the beginning. At Galimard, the experience starts simply. Sit down, breathe in, and smell everything. Dozens of little bottles, each one a single ingredient. You choose the notes you pull in, the ones you keep uncapping without even realizing it. The guide organizes them into the structure every perfume needs. Top notes that greet you first, heart notes that carry the story, and base notes that stay with you the longest. From there, she blends them in different proportions, adjusting the balance drop by drop, until something begins to feel like you. And when she handed me the final mix, warm and bright and a little unexpected, I knew exactly what to call it. Mary goes to Grasse.
This one is for you.
Yes.
And for you, we have also your home scent. Good job, everyone.
Thank
I
you.
hope you spend a nice day with us. I hope you enjoy it.
To understand the geography of this stretch of the Mediterranean, you have to look just past the French border. A short train ride away, less than 3 miles of waterfront, belongs to the Principality of Monaco. It's the second smallest country in the world. Only Vatican City is smaller. To put that in perspective, Monaco is just over 500 acres, smaller than Central Park in New York. It's no surprise so many travelers fold Monaco into a simple day trip. The ride is barely 15 minutes, but the shift in atmosphere feels like crossing into another world. We're here because I want to check the box. This is country number 43. I wish I had more time to spend here. Yes, it's the home of the rich and famous, but really I'm here because there's beautiful gardens, there's an oceanography museum. Apparently, this country is really leading the charge in environmental conservation. And of course, being a big Grace Kelly fan, I had to see the church where she was married. Grace Kelly, the American movie star who became Princess of Monaco, still feels present here in photos and stories, in the way people talk about her. And what makes that presence even more powerful is that Princess Grace passed away in 1982. Yet her influence still shapes how Monaco sees itself today. Inside the cathedral, it feels grand but not overwhelming. Honestly, it's the perfect size if you happen to have 1,000 people attending your wedding. It's just beautiful. There's an old town which is up here on the hill. It is very clean. Monaco is pristine. You can eat off the streets, it almost feels like. But then again, if you're one of the richest countries in the world, you can afford to keep it clean, huh? I took the bus up here, but I wanted to take the scenic route, taking the long way back to the train station. But, oh my gosh, look at this view. I hope you enjoyed this visit to the French Riviera and appreciate now not just the beauty of the region, but the history and the culture. Thanks for joining me on Mary Goes Round the World. Here's my tip of the week for you. If you want to explore perfume making yourself, Grasse has factories and museums that go deep into fragrance history. English tours fill up fast. I tried booking the day before and I almost missed out. If one studio's full, try another. That's my tip of the week for you.